Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cosmos Online Open House Series. I'm your host, Keith Stone, and we're very happy to welcome as our guest today, Dr. Rachele Pierini. Dr. Pierini is a philologist and linguist who specializes in Bronze Age Aegean scripts with a focus on Linear B. She did her training in Bologna and Madrid, has, among other achievements, been a visiting scholar at the Complutense Madrid and at Cambridge, and is a cultural ambassador for her native country of Italy. She is also currently a fellow at the Center for Hellenic Studies. The topic of our conversation today will be reinventing old craftsmanship, Mycenaean furniture, and today's design. Now, Rachele, as I foretold to you before you begin, I'd like to ask you what first sparked your interest in the ancient world and these Bronze Age Aegean scripts?
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for this question. I don't know if I have to thank you, but
Okay.
No. I mean, actually, the answer is quite simple. I love words, and I've always been interested in words. But when I say always, I mean that my interest was born when I was 6 years old. And I was fascinated by the possibility to cut words and to understand the meaning of very strange, at that moment, were very strange words. So this fascinating me since really I was a little child. And then I discovered that what fascinated me was the Greek roots that we have still in Italy, in the Italian language, because also English, but with language stem from Latin, some roots are more evident. So I reconnected. I've been told that these roots were from Greeks, so I said, this Greek, I love this Greek. And when I grew up, I want to study Greek. Am I still here? So, but then I just like to go back, because once you know Greek, you discover that there were something else before the alphabetic Greek, that was Mycenaean Greek. And before Mycenaean Greek, there were Linear A that we don't know what it is. And this is possibly even more fascinating because you have a riddle, and we love try to solve riddle. So go back in time, in space, and you go to Indo-European, to Proto-Indo-European, and possibly also to pre-Greek languages. So it's fascinating. It's something that I like.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, well, let's begin. Yes.
Let's begin. And what I choose to talk about today is somehow related to words, because we will dive into words, but it's also an attempt to give some different goals. For example, maybe you might have already heard that classical studies are often criticized because they just classicists like classical studies. And outside our niche, they are not so popular. So one of my intent is to show that classics tests can speak to everyone, and they can be interesting, fascinating, amusing. Boring is really the last things that comes to mind when you think about the ancient world. So the topic I choose to talk about is furniture. Furniture is something that we deal with daily in our life too. And this is a direct link between the ancient world and today's world. And similarities are even bigger if we focus on specific details, as we will see in a few moments. And we will see that Mycenaean furniture is surprisingly modern. because they have specific things that we still have today, and in a very cheap and practical way. So on the one hand, we have words, and on the other hand, we have the concrete object words referred to. And this another question arises, and I mean, what if change the object, change also the word accordingly? And what if change the word? Does it mean that also the object has changed? Think about it. You have about 30 seconds. Okay, so I'd like also to have a sort of interaction if it's possible, but I don't know, just try to keep in mind this kind of questions and, you know, think about your personal answer. Just spoil the end. There is not a right answer, and the answer depends in case by case. So it's somehow difficult to outline something that is general and you know that one size doesn't fit all. So, but what might be the process? What might be the characteristics? What might be what we have to deal with, what we have to take into account? For example, we can use the PDF you already have that begins with the so-called boring stuff because we have text, but then we also have images. So in the PDF you see something that is wonderful, in my opinion, that are the Mycenaean tablets. And in particular, you have a selection from the Pilo series TA, that is the Mycenaean series dealing with furniture, of course. And in particular, within this series on furniture, I selected some tablets on tables. It's some sort of tricky word joke. So, topics, and I don't know, do you have the handout with you? I have to share it in the...
Everyone should be able to have it. Maybe we could display it. But Sarah, maybe you could take care of that. And Rachele, you can just continue.
Okay. So, for example, in the first tablet, that is Pilo 713, we see Topeza, Raeya, Kuteseio, Ekamapi, Erepate Yokwe, Apiquato, e Newopeza, Quiquicomena, Toquide. Okay, this is really a strange something, words that we are not used to hear, of course. So then you have the alphabetic Greek transcription, that is Torpeza. Torpeza is Torpeza, Trapeza, table. Now, a very interesting thing is that the etymology of Trapeza is supposed to mean 4 foot, because we know that tables usually have 4 foots. However, the latest research on the linguistic reconstruction argued, and convincingly, in my opinion, that the meaning is not 4 foot, but rather 3 foots. So, on the one hand, we have the linguistic hypothesis that say to us something different. What we can do now, for example, look in the archaeological evidence, in the iconographic evidence, and to see if there we have something that shows tables, that show 3-footed tables. and possibly that these tables are quite ancient. So if you go through your handout, you might see something. For example, in page number 2, you have seals from Knossos, and in seal from Knossos, you might begin to see, especially in the second line of your seals, yes, this one, number 1B3. You see that you have a table and you have an animal above and something that seems to be an animal also under the line of the table. And if you count the foots, you see that we have 3 foots. If you remind of the strange word I read previously, enewopezza sounds like to pezza. At least in the last part, you have pezza pezza. So what does it mean? That pezza is the Mycenaean transcription of the word peda, that is pedion, that means foot of the table. And the previous part, we have the number. In the case of enewopezza, enewos is the root of 9. In the case of topezza, to is supposed to be the root of 3. This is new, okay? So, until the hypothesis was that topezza mean 4 foot with 4 foot, the interpretation of a table with 9 feet was quite surprising. But then, if you think that a table might have just 3 foots, to have 6 or 9 foots, you just need to add tables one another. So you have the 9-foot tables. This might be a solution for a riddle. If we overlap, we make a huge chronological gap, and we go to modern design, what we can see. I choose the furniture by this design company that you have at the very end. You have at page number 6. At page number 6, you find a table from the design company Magis, and this in particular is a table by brothers Burulek. And the name of the collection is Officina. How many foot do you see? 3. Because 3 are enough to make a table stable. Tablet stable is, everything is there. But in the modern design as well, we have this. I chose Magis for several reasons. First, because it's a company that I love. And second, they have one of the model of their tables is called Pilos. And third, the owner of the company, Mr. Eugenio Perazza, is a great fan of Mycenaean Greek and classical study, and he personally founded also the conference on the Mycenaean and modern furniture. So when we have these personalities that really sustain and support our study, and they make these beautiful pieces with their own company, I mean, it's something that we really, really appreciate so much. And they didn't know, of course, that by doing this table, they were going back to the Mycenaean table with 3 foot. We have further evidence in Mycenaean for sustain the hypothesis of this 3-footed table. And if we go above, for example, at page 3, we have the reconstruction of a fresco from Pylos. So if you focus on the images you see on the low edge on the left, you see 2 people exactly. sitting each other in front of this table, and how many legs this table has. Three. I have to say that I am a very bad photographer. This is not one of my strong points. But here in the center, we have a table in the common room with 3 foot. So next time you are here in the center, please focusing on the table on the common room, because it's a 3-footed table. I would have loved to make a photo, but it was really a very unsuccessful attempt. I'm sorry. It was not possible. Sorry. At page 4, you also have the reconstruction of a very ancient table. And when I say very ancient, I refer to 2nd millennium BC. That is the era of Mycenaean tablets. 2nd millennium, of course, is a very broad chronological indication, but to say we are there. So if we want to understand what was the possible meaning, we have to go as back as possible. And here you can see my love for going back to see what happened before to explain the present situation. So this particular reconstruction comes from a Greek, and it was the impression of the table in the rock. So thanks to archaeologists, we have this kind of reconstruction. And again, we see 3 tables. So the concept is, the idea is that the 3 table is the more ancient type of table. And we have also these kind of things in contemporary art. If we go further at page 5, we see further the reconstruction of this table. We see a round surface when we can observe 3 holes to insert the legs. So from the above, you have the perspective from above with A, and then with B, you see the legs insert. And then in number C, you can see the transitional part here. So this is what we can reconstruct from ancient time. And then just a couple of years ago, we have brothers Burulak make this. And if we go to page 7, what you can see? We can see that if we look at a contemporary catalog of furniture, what we can see exactly what we are able to reconstruct with archaeology, because we can see the surface from above, and we can see from one part the tables. And this is exactly the same. Another word I'd like to show to you in these tablets on a table. So if we can go back to page number 1, that is Akarana at some point, Akarana. Tablet number, the second tablet, 715, line 2, you have Topeza, that is your best friend, is 3-footed, is a table. Acarano. Acarano, you have the alpha privativus, so without caranos, the head. So what is a table without the head is what we have in IKEA, because when we go to this kind of shop to have our own furniture, possibly at a very cheap price, we have this different part of furniture, and then we just put them together in our home. That's Mycenaean tablets. This kind of furniture is supposed to be the furniture that I have in very special occasion, because also we have evidence for fasting in Mycenaean society. That is a title of a very nice paper by a colleague. And they needed space, exactly as we need space in our houses. So If you have the wall table, of course, need a huge amount of space. But if you can each time compose and decompose the table, the amount of space you need is ridiculous, or at least enough that you can store more tables, more footstool, more stools, more everything. So they have compostable tables and chairs and everything. So a Carano is without table. And also here, at some point, you also have in one of these two tables, you have a Magapi. A Kamapi is in the first tablet you have at line number 3. A Kamapi is, it refers to the foot. It's another word for foot. So it means that you can add foods at a different level. And if we go to our contemporary furniture, what we can see, we can go directly to the last 2 pages, that is to say page 8 and page 9. And in these 2 pages, what we see the same table with 2 different top. So if we remove the top, we have a table, a Carano, without the head, without the top. And if we focus on the last page, number 9, we see that we have the Ekamapi, this kind of food in which we can choose how high they should be. So what are the differences between Mycenaean furniture and contemporary furniture? Can we say that we have reinvented old craftsmanships? They were working with a lot of materials. They were working with wood. Are we working with wood today? Yes, also. They were working exclusively with wood? Absolutely no. Just in these few examples I showed to you, you see that you also have raella, that is to say stone. And they had also other material that we don't know very much about. For example, we have paracuwe, that should be a glass, green, more or less green kind of glass, but it was a royal material. It was a very precious material, or it was something that was imitating something precious. These are questions that we cannot yet answer because we have not enough evidence. But it was not the only material. Today we have just wood? No, we have a wide range of material, but basically we still have wood. So we have wood combined with other things. Okay. So basically, these are the data I'd like to discuss with you. I don't know, Kit, it's time for some question, for some discussions. Too early?
No, this is great. I know I have a couple of questions, but I'll defer if anyone else has a question.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Aileen.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's very interesting. I had just a question because how about the tables, the torpeza? Okay, are there many mentions of torpeza, of tables in Mycenaean tablets in transcription?
What we have about torpeza, mainly it's almost everything there in your handout. We have to take into account that it seems that the evidence is not so big, but actually, if compared to the total amount of evidence from Mycenaean tablet we have, it's a good evidence, because the evidence we have is by chance, because of the fire in the palaces, and so it was the tablet that was stored there at that moment. And this one is by chance. Seems to be little, but it's bigger than what appears. But it's what we have basically. If we look just at Mycenaean tablets, if we brought the field of investigation to archaeology and iconography, we have something more. And we've brought the area to Egyptian. We have a lot of material tables that we still have because of the climate condition of the Egyptian area are very different. So it has been possible preserved all the old furniture. And we know that also because of the kind of wood they were using, we know that they had trades between the Crete, the Aegean, and the Egyptian, between Crete and the Anatolia. So they were circulating. So if we focus just on the evidence from the linguistic evidence from tablets seems poor, but it's a very specific light that can put a whole palace alive. I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead. Robert, I think I saw your hand.
Thank you. Yeah, this is very interesting. Hi. So when you're looking at drawings of tables on two-dimensional surfaces like vases or frescoes and things, how do you know whether there's 3 legs and not one hidden leg behind it that the artist?
We have perspective. Yes, thank you for asking this question. Yeah, this was debated. This was highly debated. Then we have to rely on what iconography says. And again, not just focusing of this particular imaging, but broadening the investigation to other kind of attestation. It seems that there were 3 legs. They were not just a matter of perspective, but were 3 legs. That were 3 legs. It's, I mean, I'm not an iconography professional, so I mostly rely on what conclusion by other scholars. They are reliable, and their arguments are compelling, and but yeah, this is a great question. Thank you. Yeah, this is what we have to dive into deeper, because that's the point.
In the handout, I think you gave us some visuals of, let's see, a table with 2 legs, maybe 2 tables with 3 legs, and it looks like maybe the 4th example is a table with 4 legs. Am I interpreting these images correctly? Of the seals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm not trying to say that 4 food tables didn't exist. No, at some point, of course, we have the tables with 4 food, but they were possibly at some point contemporary, because also nowadays we have a very different kind of tables. And this is the question I was trying to giving you food for thoughts at the beginning. What happens if the object change? Does also the word change accordingly? At the beginning, also, if we go back, for example, not in wooden furniture, not even in proper tables, but in small objects that had like the shape of a table and were used mainly for ritual purpose, but also in domestic areas, we see that the most ancient one have just 3 legs. 3 legs is enough to make a surface stable. So once the 3 is enough, why ancient manufacturer should have bothered to build a 4th leg if 3 is enough? Of course, then when you when the technique is evolving and you have and your personal skills are evolving, and I mean, I'm not just talking about a singular manufacturer, because once you acquire, when you reach a level of knowledge, you can teach someone else your knowledge. So the other person need to learn by themselves, of course, but can reach easily your same level if skilled, of course. So once that build 4 table was not so difficult, possibly with 4 table was even more stable. With 4 foot, sorry, that was even more stable, and is what we have today as well. But we still have the 3-footed table. And something, my impression, but this is an impression, okay? And it's something that is a work in progress. Something that I'm trying to investigating is if there is a relationship between the round shape and the 3 table and the 3 foot, and then when the table change and begin to be squared, the 4 foot is the most common type of table we can have. Because also, if you have a rectangular or squared surface, you have 4 corners. If you have a round surface, you have no corner. So with the round surface, 3 is enough. But with the squared surface, 3 maybe is not enough. Although from Egypt, we have evidence of squared rectangular table with just 3 foots. But my impression is that the original, the first model was round and 3 table, and then evolution.
Mm-hmm. I can certainly see how a table, as it gets longer, would need to have 2 at each end. But anyway, sorry, Rachele, I interrupted you.
May I just ask, before we move on, sorry, Maria Eugenia, Raquel, can you tell us, when you say that from Egyptian we have an evidence from about tables, rectangular tables with 3 legs, so you mean that there is a rectangular surface?
Yeah.
Which is based just on 3 legs?
Yeah. Maybe if I find it quickly, I can show you, but don't be too optimistic, please, because I have so many things here in my laptop that might be complicated, but I can try to do something. But yes, I basically will. There is this Egyptian table. Here, what we have. 3-foot table. No. In this moment, maybe without waste your time while I'm looking for this photo, I will find the photo and send
thank
to
you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. That will be really fascinating. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
So thank you, Rachele, for this exposition. My question points more to the contemporary designs you show. What conception of history do you think lies behind these contemporary designs? I mean, what in this dialogue between antiquity, myth, paleography, archaeology, and these designs, is it an aesthetic encounter only, or is it a reappropriation, or what kind of definition of history lies behind these designs? And thinking about words, as you said, redefining modern and antique.
Okay. Thank you for this question as well, because this is a topic that I have broadly discussed with Eugenio Perazza and also with his staff on the Magis. And something that I was not able to imagine until I had the opportunity to talk with them was the huge amount of work that you have behind a table. And I mean, I was not thinking that are lazy, of course, absolutely not. But you can really understand what is behind just once you go behind, or at least you have someone taking your hands and putting you in this kind of context. So what they do in Magis, and this is my only experience, I really hope that everybody works this way, but they do, and this is what I can report to you. They extensively studies a lot of things. And one of the first link I found, that one of the first connection I found between our studies and furniture, modern furniture, was the prototype, because they say we make a lot of prototypes, and when the prototype is out, we have feedback and we make correction. So they said, this is proofreading. Maybe proofreading is not so expensive, how to produce a table, and they possibly have to him it out. But the principle we have behind is the same. So they study a lot. What they do, my direction is try to go back to try to discover the origin. What they do is study the object to understand the further potential of this object. The question they ask is, I'm looking this table or this chair or this whatever, this object. What I need to see to make this object change. And what we focus on is the same. What I need to see to understand how this object could be this object, what we have previously. So what I see is that we are on the same path. Maybe sometimes we go in the same direction. More often we go on different directions, but it's the same path. This is my impression.
Thank you, Rachele.
I have a question. May I?
Yeah.
Ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay. When you were talking about circular tables and rectangular tables, it occurred to me that a rectangular table would facilitate a hierarchy of where people sit. And I wondered if you knew if there was any evidence for those. I mean, those hierarchies certainly exist in sort of with the aristocracy in England, or have done historically. And I wondered if you knew if there was any evidence of that in ancient times.
Yes and not. Yes and not. They said, thank you so much. I'm receiving so interesting question. I want to have more dialogues with you, really. And the evidence is not so, unfortunately, the evidence is still too poor to have a proper conclusion from this point of view. What can be realistically said based on the evidence we have thus far is that the differences in hierarchy can be found not in the difference in shape between round table and square table, but rather in the decoration.
Right.
We have very richly decorated chairs. We have very richly decorated footstool.
Right.
And we also know that the plant of the Palace of Pylos, and I'm talking about Pylos because these areas in from Pylos, but we can think that the same thing were happening in Knossos, in Mycenaean, in Thebes, and everywhere we had Mycenaean palace. What we know is that the plant was made to have the throne room very small, and then out of the throne room we have a bigger room, and we have bigger and bigger and bigger. With this kind of festivity, as I said previously, maybe was very quick, but I said that this furniture was for a festivity. It was a ritual, it was a special occasion, they were celebrating something. And in this kind of celebration, the whole land of, I would say town, but it's not the concept of town we have in modern times. However, the whole population was invited at the banquet. They had not enough room for everybody, but it was not a problem because they were not aiming to seat everybody. So the concept was to have the power, the leader, the king or the priest or whatever represented the authority, seated in the highly richly decorated chairs, sitting at the richly decorated tables, because we saw that this is not the kind of table you use every day to have your meal or whatever, or also a sacrificial table, because if you need to have a sacrificial table, you don't want all this kind of decoration that makes your works sacrificial, so difficult. So they had a lot of differences in hierarchy, but what we know thus far is that these differences were marked through decoration and through the physical disposition of object. Another thing that is really highly debated within the TA series from Pylos is the interpretation of another word that is taranu, that corresponds to the first millennium Greek trenus, and we don't know what does it mean. I mean, we know that trenus is the footstool, but we don't know what tarano was in Mycenaean time, because the linguistic evidence is controversial, and apparently in some points seems to be a footstool that was coupled with the chair, but in other attestation seems to be a proper seating. So if maybe a middle hypothesis that has been proposed is that it was a sort of stool, but with very short legs, so you can use it both as a footstool or as a proper seating, depending on the circumstances, for example. And in this case, if you can use a chair with its own footstool, and then this object as a seat, this is also another way to remark hierarchy and differences in status.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, Janet, you go. Do you want to, Janet, or I have a question too, but Janet, you go first.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you for this interesting presentation. I'm thinking about 3 parts. Number 3, the multiples of number 3 we see in Iliad and Odyssey. Also the modern Greek table.
Okay.
Is there ritualistic significance of 3 legs? Because I think in Priestess of Pythia has sitting on a 3-legged chair.
Yes.
So are there other items with 3 legs and number 3 being significant?
I'm trying to waste time because I have not a question to your, I have not an answer to your very interesting question. The what we know about number 3 is about sacrality of courts. The problem is that we have this information from later sources. And from the methodological point of view, it's not fully correct, to don't say the opposite, to use so late evidence to sustain, to trace it back millennia, hundreds of years. But yes, this is another way. This is another way because we have everything there. We have this object used in a ritual context. We have the sacrality of number 3. We have everything pointing into this direction. Yet we still lack the big claim that you say, yeah, is this. But we are going there. Sometimes it's very surprising. I mean, it's not surprising, but it's surprising that a word that you have in Mycenaean time and then in Greek literature, you don't see, suddenly you find this word in modern Greek. It would be not the first time. So if you have ideas and you want to focus on specific words, we can study these specific words and then trace back. This is my passion, okay? I admit. But it would be not the first time because words have a story. And what we have from Greek literature are the words of the literature, of course, and they are not necessarily daily words. And daily words keep being used despite the catastrophe, despite the collapse of palace and civilization, despite changing political roots, despite everything. And also, especially when you have very big changes in society, another thing that is very clear by analyzing the lexicon, the changes in lexicon between the 2nd and the 1st millennium BC in Greece, is that what disappeared are the luxury item, and what remains are the daily object because they keep being used. So it's this kind of different path of transmission that make a word that you can use now reliable to be traced back. And I really hope we can find something because it's so interesting. I can hear you, Claudia.
Okay. Yeah. I have a question. Okay, grazie mille, Rachele. Grazie mille. My question is, isn't it a question of size, the difference between 3-legged tables, which we use for smaller tables, what we call an occasional table, and then if they needed a bigger table for more stability, obviously they would have needed 4-legged tables. So are we talking about a question of size or?
Again, for example, we have, I have not a clear-cut question, yes or no, this on this. No, we have not enough evidence for this. I'm sorry. What we have is that we have small tables with, especially the little one with short legs, with 3 foot. And when we have, especially in archaeological evidence, 4-footed tables, they are already bigger tables. Mm-hmm. So possibly the size and play a role, possibly. But again, we have not enough evidence to decide whether the size, or rather the shape, rounded versus squared, was what make the final decision. the thing to take into account is how to make this table stable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what we know till now is that it's not about the size, but rather the shape. However, it's also true that we have evidence of little table with 3 tables, but not enough evidence for little table with 4 tables. So the question is open. Sorry.
4 legs.
Yeah. Sorry.
Mm.
So the question is open, and the material under discussion is this one.
Mm-hmm.
To the point, to go back to the seals, I see that all of these tables seem to have quite large animals on top of them, and they have, again, 2 feet or 3 feet or 4 feet.
But you also have raeia topeza, I mean, tables made of stones.
Mm-hmm.
And stones was supposed to be a very strong material. And these are Minoan tables. And the Minoan civilization is characterized by the bull. And the bull is not an easy light animal. Bulls, it's a tough animal whose weight will to put on a table is it's a big effort for the table. But we have raeia, we have the table made of stone, and when the table is made of stone, of course, also the sacrificial process is easier, because we know what they do during sacrificial, and it's much easier to clean stone surface than to clean a wooden surface, and a wooden surface that is also richly decorated and carved, and this wood was worked a lot.
And these stone tables, Minoan, you're talking about, were they 3-legged?
Sorry?
The stone tables you're talking about, are they 3-legged?
Apparently, we have evidence for stone table with 3 legs. But again, there is also a matter of perspective to take into account. Yes. So
Yes.
It seems it's likely that we can say yes. Is this a definitive question? No. But it's likely. At the moment, it's likely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Kat, I see that you have a question.
Yeah, I have a more general question. You gave a very interesting outlook in terms of looking at the Mycenaean evidence and going to contemporary 3-legged tables. I'm wondering about the evolution of tables over the centuries. For example, 3-legged tables in classical Greece and so on, and that they probably never went away altogether anywhere. So why are we linking the contemporary one specifically with the Mycenaean one?
No. The answer to this question is very, very simple, and because it's something that I like, and it was very easy for me to focus on that. But
but there was, evolution over millennia, right?
Yeah. This this is technical in a very secondary meaning, technical question, and that is to say that as scholars we often have to find new area of investigation, and the Mycenaean furniture was not studied. And if there is a riddle, I'm going there to the riddle. And it was just a matter of most of them was just a matter of casualty, and but it was just a starting point. But it was a so interesting starting point, because when you start everywhere. You start in the middle. You are not choosing the point into which you want to start. So I just start in a point, and from this point is when it's like when you have something on your fabric, and you have the thread, and you just keep the with the thread, and you have you have the wool thread there on your hands at the end. So it was just by chance that I begin there, and I'm planning to keep working on this because yes, we have a lot of material under discussion, and it's also something that it's appealing, that might be create an interest broader than the linguistic interpretation of Mycenaean tablets that I love, but maybe, I mean, we are
But
just a few
Mycenaean
people.
furniture, I mean, is a fascinating subject.
It's wonderful. I'm so happy that you're sharing this passion with me.
I mean, because the physical objects that surround people in their daily life are what life is about in so many ways. And then the whole cultural influence and where it goes and so on. I just got really curious because we were just looking at two totally different millennia in terms of particular table style. And there has to have been lots and lots of
this is something
over the centuries, millennia, etc.
Absolutely. This is something that is here. I mean, it's here. I'm trying to keep the...
Well, this project will keep you going for millennia.
You know, arts long. This is Seneca. Arts longa.
Yeah, Seneca is very wise.
So Rachele, I really like the way you're bringing evidence in from different places, but I just wondered if I could go back to the sort of linguistic question, that being my thing. So I'm not familiar with Linear B, but I was thinking about your question about if something changes function, whether a term gets preserved. And I was thinking about a couple of Homeric examples with wine, because the word for wine originally was more what we would think of as mead. And then they brought in wine, but there's occasional references in Homeric poetry to the word for methu, for that sort of honey drink. And then there's also the wine pourer is used for somebody who is actually pouring nectar for the gods. And I wondered if that was the sort of thing you were thinking about, where a function was sort of preserved in an older form when it's applying to something else. Is that the sort of thing you're thinking about?
Okay. Yeah, fascinating question. Thank you. That is wonderful, the discussion. I love it. I was thinking about the relationship between the object and the characteristic of the object highlighted by the word. Because, for example, in the writing the examples you just show about the wine, they refer to specific characteristic of wine, and they keep being strictly closely related to these characteristics. It doesn't matter how how begins the relationship between the object and the word refer to the object, but what matters is how this relationship evolves. So if they keep having a very close relationship and this direct link between the characteristic, not the object, but one of the characteristic of the object and this word keep indicating this characteristic, if the characteristic change, is very likely that also the word change something. Differently, if the word is just something that we use to refer to an object that does not a soul, I mean, is not characterized by the specific characteristic this cluster of sounds was referring to, in that case, they might split. And we might say that the object will go through a path, and the phonetic or semantic or morphologic evolution of the word will keep another path, because this link is not there. So what we can say more or less is this. And when I say more or less, I don't aim to be inaccurate, but as I said previously, one size doesn't fit all. So when I say more or less, it's because it explains several examples, but not all. And of course, all the examples that remain outside the explanation, from my point of view, are the more interesting, because it means you have another riddle. This is something very nice, but you also have another explanation at play there, because what we have to keep in mind clearly is the diachronic evolution of everything. And when we try to label something, when we try to give a rule, we are just like making a photo of that moment. And then if you compare everything with that photo, you say, but it doesn't fit. Actually, it fits. There is just a matter of temporal distance, of chronological gap. So once you say, okay, it doesn't fit. Okay, so this photo, what stage of evolution reflects? That's all. Well, the answer, the question is nice. The answer is complex, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Go ahead, Jack.
Speaking of, thank you.
Hi.
I'm Jack Vaughn. So that's very inspiring, both on the material culture and on the linguistic front. I've opened really a lot of interesting questions. One thing, going back to Kat's mention of influence, I wonder if Mies and Gropius and the others in the Bauhaus movement, where they seem to study minimalist support and minimalist line features of not just architecture, but furniture and sort of total physical design. If they weren't inspired by whatever they were able to see about Minoan, Mycenaean structures. Of course, we know now that a lot of that was somewhat manipulated by the original, by Evans, but there are just so many out of nowhere, what we call modernist furniture and architecture features in the look and the proportions that seem to echo the Minoan Mycenaean, that I wonder if there wasn't some study of the historical and record.
I have to say that I found bibliography on this respect. It's not academic bibliography. I mean, it's not the kind of paper you can find in the specialized journals or book or whatever, but I found a lot. I found something talking about Bauhaus, exactly, and the Minoan origin of their inspiration. Yeah, there is something there at play. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name, neither of the author or of this article, and differently from the Egyptian fable, three-footed table, I'm not sure that I can have an answer to this question quickly, because this book I have it in Italy and I will be 40 weeks here in DC. But once in Italy, I will go back my home and I will look to this book I have clearly in mind. But yes, I will try to find it, however, but I can promise to do it.
Thanks.
But yes, they have that. They definitely have this. But I think that there is something more there, because I've read also lots of interview to architects, to artists, to designers, and what they say is that yes, once you have the inspiration, or once you have clear your mind about what you want to do, you try to find technical solution to realize this kind of things that you have in mind. And imitation of the nature is something that contemporary designers often propose. And imitation of nature is what we have always seen in the history of the art. So maybe sometimes the difference is just a matter of technical possibilities, of materials, of technological developments. Because when we have the typical Minoan vessel that is shaped like a vessel, and you have the octopus, you have the shape of the animal, the natural shape of the animal, and the natural shape of the vessel that are perfectly matching. And comes to mind an object by Magis, of course, is the architect, the Zara, the name, the architect. She was constructing shelves, and the inspiration were the waves of the sea. And this kind of object was made thinking about how the light was reflected by the surface, so importance of the material, and also the natural shape of the wave. And what we have in Minoan decoration, wave. I mean, great mind thinks alike, they are there, maybe.
Our time is about up, so thank you all for joining us. And Rachele, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Very
Thank
inspiring.
you.
So I hope you all will join us next time.